Thank you very much, Mr. Redenberg, for that testimony. The chair will now be recognizing members for 5 minutes for questions, and I will begin by recognizing the chair of the House Committee on Natural Resources, the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Westerman, for 5 minutes. Mr. Westerman.
Thank you, Chairman Hurd, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today to talk about one of my favorite subjects and your expertise in that area. Mr. Vredenberg, I know that you mentioned the role of ITARA and how the role that it's played in the Cow Creek Band's wildfire preparation. Could you speak further about the reduction of wildfire risks seen through ITARA's work?
Certainly. ITARA allows us to respond more effectively, more quickly. Time is of the essence in the West. Over half of our national forests around us have burned. We don't have the luxury of time or long delays. For a forest management activity to occur on tribal trust land, there are over a dozen federal decisions required. ITARA allows us to streamline that and make those decisions locally where we're most familiar with the land.
Yeah. And so it allows you to respond more quickly. How would you judge the results of where you've been able to do management under ITARA compared to areas that maybe adjacent areas or areas in the region that haven't been managed?
Prior to ITARA, we had the unfortunate experience of suffering the Milepost 97 fire. It took almost a year to be able to, restore, rehabilitate those lands. It cost the tribe millions of dollars. After ITARA, we had a fire in the same place, and usually, as you know, Chairman, those reburns expand the burn area, and it grows. Because of the work we were able to do under ITARA and the pre-fire treatment, the second burn was only a few hundred acres with minimal damage.
Good. Mr. Luker, the isolated parcels owned by the BLM are adjacent to or near land owned by the Pechanga tribe. How well is this land currently taken care of by the BLM, and how would that change if taken into trust for the tribe?
Yes, the BLM is doing the best they can with the resources they have. We are excited if having the opportunity to get our cultural resources department, our environmental department, and our fire department up there to take a look. It's very rugged land, rock landscape, difficult to traverse. So we have other parcels that we've taken into trust over the years that we've been able to do surveys, habitat surveys, and it's created a great buffer for us for fire prevention as well.
So you mentioned the BLM's doing the best they can, but would you say that when the Pechanga start managing and doing those wildlife surveys and the other things they have expertise in, does the landscape get better when that happens?
It sure has over the years. On our behalf, we've been able to do great surveys, identify cultural resources, which are important. If there is a fire, we can direct fire departments to stay away or keep bulldozers away from significant sites. So that's made a huge difference in areas that we've had under our jurisdiction.
And Ms. Supernov, you're in an area very near and dear to me, maybe a little bit further west from where I live, but very similar forest types. Can you talk about some of the work that you all have done?
Is this regarding the appraisals?
Right, and any kind of work. You've done some work with Ouachita Forest as well, haven't you?
Exactly. So, yes, we have our resource management department that does an excellent job in covering both realty and land services, our environmental department, as well as we're most proud of our Quapaw Services Authority, which is the entity that works under the funding of the EPA as well as the Oklahoma Department of Environmental Quality for purposes of remediating the Tar Creek Superfund site. So we're very pleased with the capabilities that they have developed over the course of the last 2 decades.
Thank you, and I don't think I have time to ask another question, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
The gentleman yields his time. At this point, the chair will recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, the gentlewoman from New Mexico, Ms. Ledger-Fernandez. Ranking member Ledger-Fernandez.
Thank you so very much, and thank you very much for having this conversation about the great work that you were able to do at Cow Creek with regards to managing your own forest. It's nice to hear this good news, right? In fact, that each of you bring about the work that you're doing on your tribe. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record the article, unanimous consent, the article Wildfire Mitigation in New Mexico down 53% since Trump took office.
Without objection.
So, and this article states that analysis of U.S. Forest Service data shows that wildfire mitigation efforts in New Mexico, including prescribed burns and other hazardous fuel treatments, are down by 53% since President Donald Trump took office. When compared to yearly averages over the Biden administration, the data shows that the U.S. Forest Service is significantly behind on wildfire mitigation in the country's national forests. It shows that in 2023, under Biden, there was 203,000 acres addressed, whereas in 225, that number dropped to just 68,000. And I think that what I'm going to hear from you is, or what I'd like you to address, is how does that compare to what you've been able to do on tribal lands when you're in control? Like, have you seen this kind of drop of 53% in the last year, or have you been able, because you've been in control, to continue the work as you see is necessary?
Sure. Thank you for the question. The IFMAT 4 report and the previous 3 IFMATs identified that tribes were able to do more, accomplish more with less. That's the exciting thing about HR 5515 is that it further streamlines and lowers the cost and increases the efficiency and effectiveness of our ability to manage those lands, so we can do more with less.
Right, and it sounds like you're then also able to continue the work even as there might be ups and downs at the federal level, because you're able to prioritize the kind of work that you need to do year after year. Is that correct?
Yes, and that's the power of self-determination.
Exactly. And moving to self-determination, thank you so much, Chairwoman, for raising the great work that you all have done. Now, as I said earlier, I do believe that this bill is exactly the way where we need to head to give tribes the ability to move this process forward. I noted that the bill requires that there already be a compact for appraisals. Now, since that's not authorized yet, I take it you don't yet have appraisal authority in your agreement with the federal government. Is that?
Thank you for the question. Yes, that is correct. However, we have found some pretty innovative ways to, in essence, avoid and still obtain fair market pricing. So in some cases, especially for agricultural leases, we'll actually conduct an open bidding process. Unfortunately, sometimes the BIA's direct observation prohibits multiple bids. Therefore, you don't necessarily get a fair market price for, in this particular example, an agricultural lease. So the BIA will acknowledge those, but we have to ensure that it's fair market value to protect the lessees so that they are fairly compensated for the activities being conducted on their land.
Right, and that's what I like about this legislation is it's recognizing that tribes really are going to make sure, because it's in your interest and for your tribal members' interest to make sure it is fair market. But I think we need to look and make sure that it is available to all tribes. Not every tribe would have compacted these areas, but many tribes actually have the need for these appraisals and have the ability to and the need to take land into trust. And so that's why we look forward to working on the bill, and I would take it that you won't have any objection to making sure all tribes would be able to take advantage of these this appraisal process.
Absolutely. I actually believe that the bill will encourage additional tribes that don't already compact for trust and land management purposes to do so. because it provides an additional incentive, for them to exercise self-determination on their own land.
Great, thank you. And Council Member, your testimony about that the gravel pit would have created a hole in the land and in a sense in your own story was so moving. And I think that is an example of why we need to move quickly on these land and trusts. I don't know, I think I've run out of time. If you wanted to provide any other sense of the... I've run out of time, aren't I? Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you very much. The testimony was very powerful about the importance of this land and how you must protect it. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. At this time, the chair would like to recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. LaMalfa, for 5 minutes. Mr. LaMalfa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, once again. And again, panelists, for your testimony and for your time and travel to be here, of course. Following back up with the issue on 5696, and I wanted to drill down on something that you had mentioned in your testimony, Chairwoman Suprana, that the Huapa have assumed 21 BIA functions in your manner of doing business, and that the STREAMLINE Act would be number 22, I guess, right?
Correct.
So, what do you believe the holdup is on why this function hasn't already been approved for tribes, with being able to appraise, especially their own land, the land they've had much history on, for example?
Thank you for the question. I think this is, from my own personal perspective, I think it's a holdover from a bit of that paternalistic view, in that I mentioned fair market value previously. I think that much of the federal law was put in place to protect tribal citizens, and I think that intent was good. However, unfortunately, that intent turns negative on us when following the rules basically disincentivizes us from further economic development. That's my own view. That's just an opinion.
Yeah. Well, time is money, and we all get that across all sectors, with waiting for a government to move on permitting, on plan checking or whatever it might be. But in this case here, protecting tribes, I guess, from themselves is what the attitude would be. But you have tribes that are compliant and steeped in the ability to work through the uniform standards of the PAP, right? And so with that stamp of approval, with that education, I guess, on it, there shouldn't be any issue. It's a standard they meet for the appraisals and such, and so it shouldn't be a problem, right?
I don't believe it would be a problem. As a matter of fact, that's kind of our ability to manage the land is fundamental to our ability to do things like monitor the environmental damage that exists on our reservation, as well as to perform our remediation activities. Therefore, I think that, at least with the Quapaw Nation, we more than sufficiently meet the threshold and the expertise and the experience necessary to do this responsibly.
Certainly that firsthand experience and the knowledge of that land like the back of your hand would be great value. It's just putting it into play in a uniform standard, and so this accomplishes all that, and tribes are protected in that the standards are there. So it reaffirms that this is a pretty sensible way to go, a piece of legislation. So we're happy to in this committee to push that along. So I thank you again on that. Let me turn to Mr. Vredenberg for a moment here too on the ITARA. Since it's come into place in 2016, in order to reaffirm the government's trust responsibilities, you note that only 3 of the management plans have actually been put in place in that 9 years. And so, what do you think is the holdup on? Is it accessibility to it? Is tribes not maybe aware enough of the tool, and how do we improve upon that?
I think it's a combination of everything you mentioned. I think that an element, too, is the nature of the demonstration project created uncertainty. It's an undertaking.
For who? For uncertainty for who?
For the tribes that would be preparing an Indian Trust Asset Management Plan. So by making that permanent, I think we'll see many more tribes participate with the confidence that it's a permanent program.
So the concern that there was expiration of ITARA in 10 years, or in whenever they resume or pick that up before 2026, that it may expire and then they're left holding the bag with an ITAMP that is no longer valid or renewable.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Well, hopefully we have success in this round of legislation. I appreciate Chairman Hurd for taking that up. So I'll yield back. Thank you.
The gentleman yields. At this time, the chair recognizes the gentlewoman from Washington, Ms. Randall, for 5 minutes. Ms. Randall.
Thank you, Chairman Hurd, for holding this important hearing and being dedicated to doing this work. I also want to thank our witnesses for being here today. Mr. Chairman, your partnership on the ITARA Amendment Act has been incredible, and as folks know, ITARA was enacted in 2016 with the goal of empowering tribes to have more authority to manage their own trust assets. But as we heard in the hearing earlier this year, the red tape and administrative challenges and inadequate funding have caused many tribes to be unable to utilize the benefits of ITARA as it was intended. That February hearing was very early in our first year as members of Congress, but it showed me how you, Mr. Chairman, are committed to learning from the witnesses that come before this committee. When President Kapoman from the Quinault Tribe of Indians traveled to Washington, D.C., and explained very clearly about some of the challenges that they had navigated, and you asked thoughtful questions, and then I think it was a conversation we had on the sidewalk that sparked for me that we would be able to work on this together. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and thank you so much for your leadership. This bill reaffirms the trust responsibility of the federal government to tribal nations and strengthens tribal self-determination in the management of trust assets by cutting this unnecessary red tape and allowing more tribes to develop Indian asset management plans, as you have already spoken to. Mr. Vredenberg, I wonder if you can share a bit about how implementing ITARA helped your tribe also implement further ecosystem restoration work, including increasing fish return.
Absolutely. ITARA has allowed the tribe to be a more effective manager. Natural resource decisions are best made as close to the ground as possible. The tribe has been managing these lands for millennia. They know it, and they know their community and the values of the community. And so the decisions come much more quickly with the fullness of that knowledge, and the results are showing out on the ground as we're seeing fish return to places they haven't been in a decade, and our wildlife populations responding with abundance.
That's wonderful. Certainly in my own district, I have had a chance to see how tribal leaders and tribal natural resources scientists are the best positioned to make these management decisions about their lands and waters and forests. And in fact, during the shutdown, when we didn't see government scientists be able to uphold some of their co-management responsibility in Washington, it was tribes that continued to do so much of that important work. But it's not, as I think was mentioned, it's not every tribe that is able to take advantage of creating a plan through ITARA. And, how could this amendment allow more tribes to successfully implement ITARA as intended?
HR 5515 addresses some of the hurdles and streamlines the process for tribes to be able to enter into the ITARA authority. It's also the knowledge of the permanence that knowing that that it might take a little bit of work now, but it'll be worth it in the future, and it'll be durable, something they can rely on and trust. I think is really going to foster more participation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mr. Vredenberg, and thank you to our other witnesses. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. At this time, the chair recognizes the gentlewoman from the state of Oregon, Ms. Hoyle, for 5 minutes. Ms. Hoyle.
There we go. These are new. I'm not quite sure how to work them. Sorry. So thank you very much for the recognition, and I want to thank all the witnesses, and specifically I represent the central and south coast of Oregon and have the honor to represent the Cow Creek Band of Umpqua Tribe of Indians, and also the Coquille Indian tribe, who have been leaders in using ITARA authority to more efficiently manage their tribal forest land. I think that Oregon is the only place, because of the strange checkerboard configuration of the ONC lands, where you can see management of Forest Service, BLM, state lands, private timberland, and tribal lands right next to each other. And the Cow Creek have been gracious enough to invite us out for a committee hearing to actually be able to see with our eyes the difference in management practices and how our tribal forest lands are managed for future generations with sustainable logging and healthier forests. But when you actually look at the difference, just because with Good Neighbor Authority, it's been you can't deny that the millennia of experience in natural resource management makes a difference. I hope that we're able to do that, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member. I'm proud to be a sponsor of the Indian Trust Asset Reform Amendment Act that would ensure that these tribes can continue using the ITARA program while also making it easier for more tribes to participate. So, Mr. Vredenberg, could you just share how ITARA has improved your tribe's ability to manage its forest resources, and what positive outcomes have you seen for the local environment and economy?
Sure. Thank you, and thank you for co-sponsoring the legislation. Before ITARA, we had dozens of federal approvals that we relied on. Those approvals came from offices, regional offices, hundreds of miles away from the reservation, from people that hadn't had the opportunity to familiarize themselves with the tribe's lands. Since entering the ITARA demonstration project, we've been able to streamline that process and improve the tribe's ability to quickly respond to risks and threats, but also be more proactive in addressing resource issues like stream rehabilitation and forest restoration work.
That's great. And then, in your view, how does ITARA strengthen the federal trust responsibility to tribes? And then also, what do you see the biggest barriers to preventing more tribes from using ITARA today?
The law clearly states and reiterates and affirms the federal trust responsibility. That's important. But it also modernizes the relationship from one of what's been described as federal dominance or paternalism to one of support, which is truly a more meaningful, impactful form of the trust responsibility. And there was a second part to that question.
Yeah, what are the biggest barriers?
Thank you. I think the biggest barrier to date has been the uncertainty of the demonstration project, knowing that it's going to expire. It's just it's an undertaking and a big transition, and not having the certainty of the durability, I think, has caused some tribes to be hesitant. So this law will be important.
Well, thank you so much, and I certainly hope that we're able to take you up to come out to bring all of our colleagues out to Canyonville, Oregon, which is a wonderful place in the Willamette Valley. Thank you again for being here. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields. At this time, the chair would like to recognize the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Kennedy, for 5 minutes. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for our witnesses coming all the way to Washington to talk to us about these important issues. And the tribes, being from Utah, the tribes in my district face similar problems as those presented to us by both Chairwoman Supernaw and Director Vredenberg. I'm glad that we're here to discuss the importance of the Indian Trust Asset Reform Amendment Act and the STREAMLINE Act and allowing for improved stewardship of land under the supervision of our Native nations. So thank you for your testimonies regarding that. And Councilman Luker, I had a couple of questions for you. Thank you for your willingness to help me with this. H.R. 5682 would take 1,200 acres of land from the BLM into trust for your tribe. What are your plans with the land once you are able to achieve this opportunity?
Yes, we plan to continue to work with the Santa Margarita Land Conservancy on the management of that property. There's also an adjacent piece with San Diego State Ecological Conservancy that we've had an MOU with, so we'll continue those. It'll just expand the area in which we will be able to work with those folks. We will have our cultural resources folks up there looking and seeing what resources are there. Our environmental team will be up there evaluating what is there so we can identify it with GIS markers and map it properly, which to my knowledge, has not been mapped, any of that by the BLM, Bureau of Land Management. But basically, it's going to be left in place. There's not going to be any development on it. There's not going to be no change of status. It's just going to be open space.
So as far as development of the land and using the resources, you don't foresee any opportunities to, for example, harvest timber or do any sort of subsurface mining, for example, in a respectful way?
Yeah, so likely no mining, and there won't be any mining. As part of my testimony was that mountain is a very sacred place to our folks. Yeah. And at the base of that mountain is where we believe we call it Ekfatemeku, which is like a Garden of Eden where life was first created. So we plan to keep that as pristine as possible. It's a very rugged landscape, boulders, granite boulders, and rough terrain. And I don't see any development occurring on that.
Well, I'm excited about the sacredness of the land and the opportunity that you have after many years of not having access to that you can have this opportunity to treat it as it should be treated. So bringing the land into trust for your tribe, what sort of benefits on any level will your tribe see as a result of this law that we're moving forward?
So I think tribes in general are very private about their culture, have been for decades, centuries, and we haven't really been sharing how important that meant to us. The creation, the birth of the first human, we believe, was there, our first leader, and the first death occurred on top of Poesca Mountain. So it means a lot to bring our youth up there, to show them that place, teach them about the traditional knowledge. And we have a large piece of Poesca Mountain. It's 356 acres that we currently have in trust, which is adjacent. We take our kids up there. It'd be nice to be able to expand that footprint and show them some of the important places in our culture.
So thank you for that. Outside of those 356 acres, how many additional acres do you have that are adjacent to this 1,200 acres that we're pursuing at this point? So
Interstate 15 bisects a piece of the Pechanga Reservation that we just got into trust, Temecula Creek in. I believe is another 300 and some acres that are basically across the freeway from that. We're continuing to look for opportunities to acquire BLM in that area just to further preserve that space into perpetuity. So it's just the 356 that are adjacent, and then the 1261 that we would acquire under this bill.
Very good, and I compliment the chair and those that are working on this for this significant accomplishment. I'm really happy for you and your people that you can have this opportunity. Mr. Vredenberg, with my remaining moments, I just wanted to ask you, what are the short and long-term benefits of the ITARA's 10-year demonstration program becoming permanent?
The short-term benefit is we have plans. We have operational plans that go out multiple years, and it gives us the ability to move forward with confidence that we're going to be able to execute that work. The long term, it provides the security and the confidence for other tribes to enter into the ITARA authority and develop robust organizations that can be effective into the future.
Excited for that, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for convening this, and to our witnesses for being here. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. At this time, the chair would like to recognize the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Wahlberg, for 5 minutes. Mr. Wahlberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's a busy morning with multiple committee hearings and catching up from the unnecessary Democrat shutdown for 7 weeks. And I'm glad we're finally able to have you with us. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. I'm glad to be here today discussing these bills that increase the control of tribes and tribal members over their own economic development projects, restore historic tribal homelands, and make permanent ITARA program to reaffirm our trust responsibility while ensuring the tribes can manage their own true assets, trust assets. Having recently visited with the Pechanga Band of Potawatomi Indians in my district, I know that we can make a real difference in the lives of Native people in this country through common sense, bipartisan legislation. That sounds strange, doesn't it? Like some of the bills that we're considering today. Chair Supernaw, it's good to see you again, whether it's coming off an elevator or sitting in front of us. We appreciate your impact. Can you share how the STREAMLINE Act encourages economic development and activity for tribes who have IDEA compacts?
Thank you for the question. I appreciate that. I want to preface this by giving you a couple of examples of what kind of delays we're talking about, and then I can share the impacts because they go hand in hand with one another. So I'll just give you a flavor. So our 6 most recent sale of interest appraisals took extraordinary periods of time. 2 took 5 months, while the other 4 required 8 months. This is just a sale of interest. A sign lease appraisal. Now, this is where you've got to appraise the land in order to put a sign up. 2 of them required 7 months, and then actually one of them took 7 months and the other one took 5 months. Ag lease appraisals, a particular sticky point. The 4 most recent ones, 3 took 4 months and 1 took 5 months. So obviously those delays have tangible consequences. Now, we do everything that we can to plan ahead, and some of these appraisals are required when leases are simply renewed. They come up every 10 years, every 5 years, whatever the renewal is. And as a result, they're time sensitive, and those time frames far exceed appraisal processes for fee simple land. And they slow our ability to move forward with economic development. Remember, this impacts our tribal members. These aren't necessarily leases where the Quapaw Nation is the leaseholder. These are individual tribal citizens that are seeking the assistance of the tribe, and because of the status of the land, requires this particular process to be followed. So it's not just the tribe. It hits directly to our tribal members who in many cases own undivided interest in original allotments, and they need to execute a hunting lease or an agricultural lease. So that's exactly what we're talking about. That's the impact to economic development. It also has an impact if we're going to do a significantly larger project. That appraisal is obviously required in order to get an external developer to come in and put in a particular, let's say, a manufacturing facility. These types of delays cause them to walk away because we can't move quickly enough.
Well, thank you for answering all my questions, including one I was going to ask. So I appreciate that. Mr. Vredenberg, if you could sum up the importance of tribal control over trust assets in one sentence, what would it be?
I don't usually
Or
stick
two
to one
sentences.
sentence. When tribes are in control of their trust assets, their decisions can align with their values. They can respond to risk more effectively, and their accountability improves as they directly face their local tribal members, and it's not slowed by some distant federal process.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Luker, your testimony describes the historical and cultural importance of this land to the Pechanga tribe. What would adding this land to the Pechanga Reservation mean for the tribe?
Yes, so that piece of the mountain, Pawesca Mountain, is critical to many of the songs that we sing are traditional songs, and they tell a story about our creation. They tell a story about our death. They tell stories about the meetings that occurred up there that would help people live after our leader that was furnishing us food and whatnot, how they were able to live after he had passed. So to be able to take our children up there and to show them this place and to explain the stories in the place without being disturbed by a granite mine or aggregate trucks, it means a lot to our community. I don't know how I can express how much it means to us culturally and historically.
Thank you. Thank you.
The gentleman yields. At this time, the chair recognizes himself for 5 minutes of questions. Chair Supernaw, you said something that really caught my ear, which is self-governance is economic development. I think that's a profound insight, and that's something that I think all of us on this dais can agree with. You mentioned that the Quapaw Nation has experience with self-governance over 21 separate BIA functions, so I think it's fair to say you understand where the friction points are here. What's the single most serious bottleneck in the current federal appraisal system? Is it scheduling? Is it AVSO review? Is it rework, BIA acceptance? What's the biggest single bottleneck from your perspective?
It's really the labor. I have some opinions about how to solve for it, but it's really enough resources on the ground. Remember, the one person in eastern Oklahoma, there are a whole bunch of us out there. There are 9 tribes in Ottawa County alone where the Quapaw Reservation is. So there are a number of Indian nations, tribal nations that are competing for the same precious resource, all of whom have their own economic development goals to achieve simultaneously. So that's the bulk of it, but we can do it differently. We have a wonderful opportunity before us for tribes that can prove proficiency and prove that they can meet the standards to do it on our own and simply provide that to the BIA to stay compliant with federal law. And I'm not necessarily saying that every tribe is in an equal position to do so, but for the ones who are, that's a wonderful opportunity to move forward and do things a little bit differently that reduces the burden on everybody's part. That's a win-win.
Thank you. Can you give us some concrete examples of what sorts of projects are being affected by these delays? Is it housing? Is it agricultural leases? Business development? Environmental cleanup?
It's all of the above. It is absolutely all of the above, even when it comes to something pretty straightforward like a right-of-way. And a right-of-way, sometimes it seems like something simple, but sometimes that's the key to gaining access to a piece of land that's landlocked so that construction can begin. And without being able to get that right-of-way in some period less than 8 to 10 months means whoever you're working with, like I said before, they've already gone on down the road. So, there are a whole multitude of those types of examples.
Great. Thank you, Chairwoman Supernaw. Councilmember Luker, will there be specific responsibilities or costs that the tribe will assume once the parcel is in trust?
Yeah, I mentioned that we'll continue to work with the Santa Margarita River Conservancy with the management of that area there. That corridor, in addition to being culturally significant, is environmentally sensitive because it's a corridor that animals travel from the north to the south, and I can imagine what we've done in other parcels. We'll put up monitoring systems to see how the mountain lions and the bobcats move up and down that piece of that corridor there. I'm sure that piece will be part of the multi-species habitat corridor that we will continue to manage and report to the local parties on that need to see that. Other than it being kind of held in its current status, that's the plan.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember. It's good to see you again as well.
It is. Thank you. I would love to have everybody out to visit and see the beauty of this place. It's very dear to us, but it's a very beautiful place. Sorry to take your time.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mr. Vredenberg, in your testimony, and maybe if you could sum it up for us, I think a lot of us have been hitting on this same point or the same question. You mentioned several recommendations that the Indian Forest Management Assessment Team report made to improve ITARA. Could you explain to us or just elaborate briefly in summary form how H.R. 5515 aligns with those recommendations?
Yes, and thank you, Chairman. The IFMAT 4 report recommended improved flexibility, increased tribal authority, and addressing federal bottlenecks. H.R. 5515 does exactly that. IFMAT 4 identified ITARA as a proven model, that it was working, and recommended making it a permanent authority.
Great. Thank you. Thank you to all of our witnesses for your valuable testimony, and thank you to my colleagues also for your questions. The members of this committee may have some additional questions for the witnesses, and we would ask that you please respond to those in writing. Under Committee Rule 3, members of the committee must submit any questions to the committee clerk by 5 p.m. on Monday, November 24th, 2025. The hearing record will be held open for 10 business days for those responses. If there is no further business, without objection, the committee stands adjourned. Thank you all.